afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Desha Adeshagun, and I am the Operations Associate at Pivotal Practices Consulting. Pivotal Practices Consulting specializes in supporting leaders and fostering workplaces that promote positivity as well as productivity. Our collaborative, strengths-based, client-centric approach ensures that the solutions we deliver exceed expectations and support meaningful and lasting change. Our engaging and experience-based training and development programs support executives and leaders in addressing their most pressing challenges. Today, we are presenting the Birkman, a better way to increase self-awareness, presented by Donna Miller. Donna Miller, founder and president of the Executive Resource Center and co-founder of Purse Power, has had more than 30 years of hands-on experience as an executive in Fortune 500 companies, an award-winning talent management consultant, and a professional certified executive coach. The theme of Donna's career has been around initiating, driving, and managing organizational transformations. Donna's work experience in fast-changing industries allows her to help clients excel in volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous environments that require a high degree of flexibility and innovation. Donna has a passion for making a difference in driving positive change. She is on the board of the YWCA, co-founded the Women in Leadership Conference at OCU, acts as the Oklahoma event chair for the 2020 Women on Board's National Conversation on Board Diversity, and is the Women President's Organization Chapter for the state of Oklahoma. Before we begin, if you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the Q&A box in your GoToWebinar control panel. We will answer your questions as we go along. So without further delay, I will pass the baton to Donna.
All right, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be here, and I'm excited to be talking to you about the Birkman. As Desha mentioned, I am a 30-year HR executive, and the Birkman is the best tool I've ever found for understanding human behavior. It just really explains a lot, and I like it so much my husband makes me raise my right hand when I talk about it, because I just think it's a wonderful tool. So we'll move forward. Okay. What I'm hoping to cover today is what the Birkman instrument is and how it's different from others. I want to show you how the Birkman integrates behavioral, motivational, and occupational data together to predict behavior and work satisfaction. And then we'll also communicate how the Birkman enhances people skills and aligns roles and responsibilities for maximum productivity and success. The Birkman's been around for about 70 years, and millions of people have taken it. Many of the Fortune 500 companies use the tool, and it was developed in the late 1940s by Dr. Birkman. He was a psychologist who got into a battle situation and was taking a look at why individuals interacted the way they did when they got back from experiencing the same kinds of things. And he did discover, you guys, for some reason my computer is advancing these slides without me asking it to, so my apologies. It's been used by more than 8,000 organizations worldwide, including most of the Fortune 500, and more than 3 million people have taken it. These are some of the companies that have used the instrument, and again, Harvard is one of them. This is a tremendous instrument. You're going to learn a lot about it today. Okay, it is much more than a personality test. It both describes behavior and it also gives you a prescription on what to do to be more effective. It's useful for increasing self-awareness, managing your own behavior. Also in group settings, I find that it really explains a lot about group dynamics and why people interact with each other the way they do. So it can be used for group awareness and group management. It can be used to identify growth opportunities and accelerate development. Individuals can get a lot of insight, again, about why they behave the way they do and how to focus the developmental activities to have the maximum impact. I love the language in the Birkman because it's very non-judgmental. So it is easy to hear, easy to learn from. There's no right or wrong answer. And I generally find that people can really take the information in and use it. It also provides a common neutral language for people to use inside their organization to describe behavior. And we'll get into it in just a second, but people can explain their usual behavior, their needs, and their underlying stress behavior, and it gives them an opportunity to ask for what they need from others in the organization. Okay, the way the Birkman works is there is this usual behavior that describes how you've learned to act to be most successful. When you're most productive, when you feel like you're operating the way you want to, how that usual behavior looks. Your stress behavior is also something that people can see. So when we don't get our needs met, we act out in stress, and that's also observable by others. Underneath the surface, we have a set of needs that other people are unaware of. And what happens is you may behave one way, but your underlying needs can be something very different. And if those needs aren't met, that's when we go into stress. We also have interests as individuals that other people don't know about. And the Birkman gets that out on the table as well. Okay, we believe that behavior is a function of both the person and his or her environment. There's a person's needs and interest, interacting with another individual's needs and interest. And you can see both the usual behavior, most productive behavior, the way they want to act to be successful, but also their stress behavior when their needs aren't met. Both the environment and our interpretation of what it means to us drives our behavior. In all cases, we have a paradigm that we look at the world through, and we tend to think ours is right and everybody else's is wrong. And in reality, when we see people and we have stress behavior with them, it often has to do with us having two different paradigms. We're looking at the world differently. Okay, let's go through each of the components. The components are the personal attributes that make you unique. It measures both behavior and motivation. And again, there are these three dimensions. What is your usual behavior when you're most productive, when you're most effective and you're acting the way you want to? Your underlying needs, which have to do with your expectations about the world around you and what motivates you. And then again, your stress behavior, which is when you're not getting your needs met. It has nothing to do with workload. This is when your needs aren't met. The score on the instrument is a 1 to 99, and that is not good, bad, right, wrong. It's about intensity. The scale from 1 to 10 and 89 to 99 are intense scores. If people get a score between 40 to 60, that's a more neutral score. They'll act one way one time, another way another time. Let's start with esteem. Esteem is how you relate to people one-on-one that are important to you. This could be a boss, it could be a spouse. It's somebody that you want to be held in high regard by when you're dealing with them one-on-one. It has to do with your sensitivity in relating to individuals one-on-one. You get some individuals that very much want the one-on-one communication, and they are direct and to the point. You get others that are very hierarchical in mindset. They believe that there's a right way to go about communicating, going up the chain, not end running somebody in the hierarchy to communicate. Some of the things that can be impacted by esteem and our esteem score has to do with management of performance. Some folks are very, very direct in how they communicate. They'll say exactly what's on their mind. They're not concerned about positional power. They're not very self-conscious in how they communicate. Others, back to those folks that are more hierarchical in their mindset, they are much more diplomatic sometimes with people that they perceive to be in a higher position of authority than they are. And sometimes it makes it difficult for people to have the communications that they need to have around performance, depending upon expectations around hierarchy and directness, which is what esteem is all about. Some people are very, very candid in how they communicate. Others are much more diplomatic. They're careful, they're cautious, they're concerned about how people are going to receive things. And on the needs side, you get some people that very much want people to be direct and to the point with them, and their reaction is to get more and more and more direct if people are trying to be too diplomatic. On the other hand, if people want the diplomacy, they can get self-conscious, defensive, and embarrassed if people are too direct with them. You also get differences in how sensitive people are to the feelings and needs of others. Some people tend to be very action-oriented. It's all about the task. Others are more concerned about how people are receiving things and how people are feeling about things. There are folks, depending upon where they're at on this continuum, that are better able to handle tough, sensitive issues than others. And when we come to positional power and the expectation about positions of authority and how direct you can be with people higher in the hierarchy than you are, some folks have difficulty speaking up, particularly to those in authority positions, and others don't. The acceptance score is about relating to people in groups of people. So the first one was one-on-one with people that you want to be held in high regard by. This is about how you relate in groups of people. Some people are loners. They prefer to work alone. They think the best way to work is alone. They feel more productive like that. And when they're dealing with groups, they want to deal one-on-one, 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 or with small groups of people. There are other individuals that are more about acceptance and support from a group. They very much want to belong and they want to be accepted and supported. The group that has the individualistic kind of score, back to wanting to work alone, they can look like they're not including people from the other end of the spectrum, the folks that want inclusion and want to be a part of the group. On the other hand, the people that enjoy working as a team and think the best way to work is as a team, for them, it feels like those loners that want to work one-on-one, it can feel like a waste of time being in a group setting. It's more effective for them to deal in the smaller groups. And they can get frustrated by pulling a group of people in to solve every kind of problem, which is the way the folks on the high end of the scale work. So this is about how much sociability you need, how much group inclusion and acceptance you need. And the folks with the individualistic kind of score, they could take a tough stand in a group setting because they're not all that concerned about whether or not they're accepted by the group. The folks that have the more high sociability score, those are the folks that really want acceptance and support from a group, and it can be very tough for them to do or say things that they need to do or say in a group setting if they think it'll affect the acceptance of the team. The impact on this one is about how talkative people are, particularly in a group setting, whether or not they like working with a group or would prefer to work alone, their comfort in a group. And some people have social anxiety being in a group, other people don't and are very comfortable in that setting. It also can show up as folks' approachability and openness in communication, and whether or not people want and need group approval, acceptance, and support or not. And in some settings, that works very, very well. In others, you need people that can take a tough stand in a group and be able to have that kind of conversation. The next score on the Birkman is about structure. And the structure score has to do with the degree of flexibility versus the degree of policy, process, structure, and control. You get folks who are very, very flexible, and if they're trying to get something done, they've got a high-level goal or objective they're trying to accomplish, and they change readily along the way. And they don't give a whole lot of guidance to the people underneath them, and they don't impose a lot of structure on others. On the other hand, you have other folks that very much apply structure. They have a plan, they operate according to a plan, they expect everybody to have a plan, and they're very, very high structure, and they impose structure on others. Now, people's needs can be very different. I've got a lot of clients, I'm an executive coach, that have a high structure score, meaning that they impose a lot of structure on the world around them, but they really don't want structure imposed on them. Thank you very much. They want the flexibility on their own. It can also go the other way, where you get somebody who doesn't impose a whole lot of structure with somebody underneath them who really needs it to be effective. One of my clients was an SVP. She was wanting to hold a dinner party. She told her staff, okay, I want you to invite these 10 people. It's going to run from 4 to 7. You can spend this much money, go get it done. The underling who had a higher need for structure was saying, okay, and how much money can I spend and what kind of venue would you like? Where you get into issues between bosses and subordinates is when they have different usual behaviors and different needs. If the boss imposes a lot of structure and the one under them doesn't need or want it, or the boss doesn't apply a lot of structure and the person under them really does need it and wants that guidance and doesn't like the ambiguity. So this comes into play when you're talking about project and time management. As you can imagine, the folks with the flexibility scores don't want to impose a big project plan and all the details and all of the interdependencies and all of that, where the folks that really do like the structure would like that kind of process in place. There's a communication gaps sometimes around clarity of the communication and what the expectations are. You've got one end that loves systems, policies, procedures, and structure, and the other that doesn't. So how well do you sustain it? How well do you follow it? Can come out in the Birkman. Some folks have a high degree of desire to plan and control and impose that on others. Others really don't and don't want it imposed on them. It can also impact finishing detailed tasks and this desire for predictability. Some people really want it and are uncomfortable if it's not there. Others are perfectly comfortable not having everything defined. The next Birkman component is about authority. And the authority score has to do with how much directing and controlling people want to do. You get some folks that are very high directive, they sound high control, and their communication as a leader or as a colleague is, I want this, I want it by this date, I want it done like this. High directive kind of tone to it, high control sort of tone to it. On the other hand, you get some people that are very suggestive in style. So they'll say, how about, what do you think of, why don't we try? And they use a much more open tone that's not as controlling sounding. On the other side of the equation, some folks, they want harmony on the team. Can't we all get along? If there's not harmony on the team, they want off the team. Others that have this high control kind of score, they want to discuss and debate stuff all the time. That's the way they get things done. If you ask them to do something, they're going to say, okay, wait a minute, is there a better way to do that? Should I do that? Why are you asking me to do that? They want to discuss and debate whatever they're being asked. And you can't just tell them, just do it because I say so. They really want to have a conversation about it. What can happen is if you get these two different kinds of people on the team, one group wants harmony on the team. The other group wants to discuss and debate stuff, and it can look like they're fighting, when for them, they're not at all. This is just a discussion. The other thing you get is people that have a high score on authority, this high control sort of mindset, they can misunderstand questions for information as challenges to their authority. So if somebody says, why do we do that? Instead of hearing, why do we do that? They hear, why do we do that? And then the answer is, because I'm the boss, that's why. Because I'm the mom, that's why. So as you can hear, you've got some people that want harmony and some people that want discussion. Some folks really do want everybody to get along, and they want off the team if people don't get along. And for the others, that discussion and debate is perfectly natural. That's the way they love to operate. It has to do with verbal assertiveness. Some of the things that can happen if you've got people with those two different scores in the room, again, is you've got different ideals around cooperation and what you think cooperation looks like. You've got different expectations around conflict management. Again, you've got one end that really doesn't like conflict and really wants it to be calm and everybody getting along. The other side doesn't see it as conflict. For them, discussion and debate is perfectly natural. You got folks that like to negotiate and others that don't. The other thing, the high control kind of sort of approach to things, sometimes those folks with the high authority scores don't always listen well to others, and they're very verbal and they get very dominant. The other thing is they need to know who's in charge. If they don't know who's in charge, they'll step up and take charge, is what can happen. So sometimes they don't listen well. They display dominance and control sometimes when they shouldn't. They may or may not delegate because they're in charge and they want it done their way. The thing with the folks that have the low authority scores and want harmony on the team, they may not speak up when they need to or look out for their own interests in those kinds of situations because they don't want to argue, they don't want friction. The next score on the Birkman is about advantage. Some folks want harmony on the team. Can't we all get along? And they're not all about individual advantage. They can look out for long-term intangible benefits. They trust until trust is broken. They're well-meaning. They're in for the team, and they really are in it for the team. You get other folks that are very competitively minded, and they want to know where they stand. I'm number 2. What's it take to be number 1? They need individual conversations, individual reward and recognition, individualized incentives. To those folks that want that high advantage approach, if you say, great job, team, they're going to say, what'd you think of me? On the other hand, sometimes those folks that are very idealistic, that are in it for the team, they're well-meaning and trusting, they don't look out for their own benefits sometimes, and they can lose competitive advantage. In corporate America, when it came time for salaries, for merit increases, what I found is those folks with the high advantage score were looking out for their teams, they were looking out for themselves. We did a great job this year. We need more resources. We need more reward and recognition. And the folks that are more idealistic and more in it for the team wouldn't necessarily go fight for resources. and it was sometimes not in their self-interest. On the other hand, they are the people that are looking out for the good of the whole. Those folks that have the high advantage score, sometimes they compete with each other to the detriment of the company as a whole. So I had a couple of managers of different departments, and they wanted their team to shine. They wanted to have more than, be better than another team in the organization, when the leadership really wanted them cooperating and sharing best practices. That's the risk of that high competitive kind of mindset. It's great if the competitive juices are aimed at the outside world, but it's not as effective if team members internal to the organization are pointing those competitive juices at each other. Again, though, you get these people that are very idealistic, and although they will look out for the company's interest, and that is absolutely wonderful, sometimes they assume closure on things, and again, they won't necessarily look out for competitive advantage. So I find that the high advantage folks, they want to know where they stand. So if you give them a task, they're going to say, what's my part, when's it due, and what do I get if I do it? And those the very idealistic people that are all about fairness above all else, sometimes they assume closure where there actually has not been closure on the team. Some of the issues that get impacted by advantage have to do with, again, competition, whether people are wanting to compete or not. It can come into play when you're bargaining and negotiating. So you get some folks that are very hard negotiators and others that believe in fairness. If I work hard, I'll be taken care of. If I'm not taken care of, I'll feel taken advantage of, but they're not in there trying to see what they can get. As you can see, those are really two totally different views. You get some folks that are taking risks or willing to take risks, and others that are more risk adverse. You get the group with a high advantage score really wanting to drive for personal advancement and trying to get ahead. And then the others that are much more focused on the team and believing that the organization will take care of them if they perform. The folks that are very idealistic are really willing to trust. They'll come out of the gate trusting people until you prove you can't be trusted. On the other hand, you get some folks that are high advantage that won't trust until trust is proven. And coming out of the gate, they don't trust until you prove that you can be trusted. The other thing is around financial rewards. You get one group of people that's more intrinsically motivated. It has to do with the value of the work or the contribution that they're making. And then on the other end, you get the folks that really want that individual reward and recognition. And that's what's important to them. The next component on the Birkman is around activity. This has to do with people's pace of action, how restless they are. On the one side, you get people that are very thoughtful. They want to think about it before they do it, and they want to plan. On the other hand, you get these people that are very, very action-oriented, and it's all about the activity. So on the left side of your slide, the person that's on the top of the horse and setting the direction, those are the folks that want to think about it twice, cut once. They want to pace themselves. They want to plan it before they do it. They want to have a list that they're crossing the activities off on and getting it done. And they feel best if they approach things in a methodical, planful sort of manner, okay? The folks that are on the other end, the high activity folks, they're doing 50 things all at the same time. And they will be jumping from task to task to task. And they feel like they're moving 50 things forward all at the same time. What happens is you get people making negative judgments about each other if they're on opposite ends of the spectrum. So on the one hand, you've got these people that can sit there at a terminal or a spreadsheet and they can focus for a couple of hours. They've got a list, they're crossing stuff off and getting it done. And that looks like it's not moving very fast to the folks that are on the other end of the spectrum, okay? But those folks that are dealing with 50 things all at the same time and they're jumping from thing to thing to thing can look like they're flooding all over the place to the people that are much more focused in how they work. Some of the issues that can be impacted by activity include this sense of urgency. So even if people are paced and they've got a list and they're crossing things off the list, they've got a high sense of urgency, but they're going to do it in an orderly, thoughtful sort of way. The folks on the other end, those really restless folks, are very action-oriented, and it's all about in the moment, right now. And they can confuse the pacing that the one end has with a lack of sense of urgency, which is not true at all. It's just they've got different ways of approaching it. You've got differences in patience, how patient one end or the other is to see results. Some folks want to reflect. Again, you've got people that are very action-oriented and sort of in the moment. And then you've got folks that are planning, and also about action and results. Again, both groups are very, very effective. What I find has to happen, you've got to have the role itself match the level of pacing needed. So for example, if you had a really restless person in a role where they've got to look at spreadsheets for 2 hours, that's not going to work very well. And if you have one of those folks that really wants to plan and pace themselves working out on the floor of a manufacturing environment where it's all moving very, very, very quickly, those are mismatches for the person's desired work behavior. Challenge is the most important score in the instrument. This is really how you see yourself. This is how you derive your sense of self-esteem. The low challenge folks are internally validated. Their sense of self-esteem comes from who they are, not what they do. They're very pleasant, persuasive, self-confident, want to show what they know. The folks that have a high challenge score, they are externally validated. Their sense of self-esteem comes from what they do, what they accomplish, what they achieve, higher and higher goals, demanding supervision, okay? They both absolutely have some strengths. The downside for the high challenge people is the bar is high for them and it's high for everybody else around them, and nobody can meet it, including them. So they can really be hard on themselves and hard on others if they've got a high challenge score, because the bar is very high, and if somebody does that level of work, they just see that as what's expected. They have trouble taking compliments and giving compliments because the person is just meeting their expectations if they're working very, very hard and at a high level. If you get somebody that's got a low challenge score, again, they're internally validated. The upside of them is in a crisis, whatever's going on outside of them doesn't affect their self-esteem. So I think they find it easier to operate in a crisis because it doesn't impact how they see themselves. The downside, and this is a hard one sometimes for some people, is they've got to watch it that they don't externalize things when they go wrong. So because they believe their own internal view of themselves, the outside world's view and their own view don't match, they're going to believe themselves. So what I recommend for people that have that internal validation, it's useful if things start to go wrong for them to say, okay, did I have a part in that? Did I play a role? And the example when I'm coaching I use is that I've got triplets, they're now 17, but when they were kids and we were in a store, I would snap my fingers to try to get their attention. And what that meant is, look at me, I don't want to yell. And I think I did that to a handler one time. So I think I was getting ready to give a speech. I think all the people that were getting me ready to go up there were talking over me like my kids would do when they were young. And I don't remember doing it, but I think I must have snapped my fingers because it came back to me, and I, obviously some ramifications of that. And at first I was going, well, what are they talking about? I didn't understand what the issue was. I didn't even remember doing it. And then I had to think about it for a minute and go, wait a minute, hang on. Could I have done that? And so with those low challenge people, what you need to do is say, okay, what is my part in this? What is my role? And if people come to you with an issue, don't automatically assume it's out there somewhere. Try to figure out if you had a role in whatever's gone wrong. The issues that can be impacted by challenge are work commitments, setting goals, credibility, and accountability. Those high challenge people, again, what goes on for them is they're externally validated, and they beat themselves up unmercifully internally. And you can't necessarily see that, but inside they're absolutely holding themselves accountable to a high level of performance, and they're giving themselves a ration constantly, okay? But if you get somebody who's got the internal self-esteem score, and the person who's got that high degree of accountability comes across and says, hey, you need to step up, you didn't get what XYZ done, and the lower challenge person is saying it's out there somewhere, that can look like an accountability issue. And again, believe me, I believe that there's strengths on both sides. It's just a matter of how they see each other and when it works for them and when it doesn't. The thing you find about the Birkman is it's a double-edged sword. You've got a package of strengths that all come together, and you've got a package of downsides that go with it. There's an empathy score on the Birkman, and this is about how much feelings have to do with it. So some people are very objectively minded. They're very fact-based. If they've got an issue, they want to think through the facts, but they don't necessarily want to address the emotions. There are other people that are very empathetic, very warm. They care about people. If somebody comes to them with an issue, they will listen until the person solves it themselves. You get this very objective group. You come to them to talk to them about a problem, and they want to give you a solution and get you out the door. Okay, this is what you need to do. In my work with the Women Presidents Organization, they gave us some training. And what they told us is that when we give advice, the pleasure centers go off in our brain. When we get advice, the pain centers go off in our brain. So those very objective people that are giving advice, and they can be doing it because they're really trying to help, are inadvertently putting people in a one-down situation. I know and you don't. I can solve this and you can't. So one of the things they've recommended to us, so if you're one of those people that's really a problem solver by nature, is that you ask insightful questions. So you talk to them about, okay, why did you choose that alternative? What did you think about when you made that decision? What's worked for you in the past? What have you seen other people do that has worked? You ask insightful questions to get people to think rather than just giving the answer. And then you share your life stories and have them pick out what's useful to them. When I was younger, I ran into a similar kind of issue. This is what I did, and this is what worked for me. Now, if you're on the empathetic end, you're very emotionally expressive, you're warm, you're friendly, you're caring, you really will listen, you'll let people talk their issues out until they solve it themselves. The downside for you guys is you can sometimes be too influenced by emotions. You may make your decisions based on your emotions, or you could get swamped by your emotions. And this is not all about men are from Mars, women are from Venus at all. I've done hundreds of Birkmans on both men and women, and there are plenty of men around that are very empathetic and warm and need to be listened to. Some of the issues that you can face in an organization as a result of these differences is connecting, obviously, in relationships. So how open, warm, caring do people come across? Is it all objective? Is it all factual based? Or will they actually get in touch with their emotions? And again, some of those folks that are very objectively oriented, if things get too emotional for them, they want out of the room because it's very, very uncomfortable for them. And if it's an emotional conversation somebody's having with you and people want out of that situation, you may lose some of the connectedness. Identifying solutions. Those objective people are very, very good at identifying solutions and basically saying, move on with it, let's go, here's the solution. And that's good in some cases, particularly if it's a crisis, but there may be chances for involvement and participation and other people's thinking as well. This has to do with creativity and thought and ideas. It can have to do with optimism, and it can have to do with emotionality. So these are all things that people can be different in different places on this continuum. And as you can see, they really operate very, very differently. The next component is around change. And this is how people deal with change. You get some folks that love change. They drive change all the time. In every setting, they're trying to change things. You get other folks that say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, leave it alone, it's working. Those are the opposite ends of this continuum. You also get folks sometimes that will resist change if change is imposed on them. And what they need is they need advance notice of the change and a chance to participate in the process, or they might resist the change, is the risk that they've got. If they've got a high change score, those are the folks that love change. Change is good. They'll change stuff even when it doesn't need to be changed. This can also have to do with disrupting focus. So how variable people want their work environment to be and their shift in focus to be. This also comes into play here. So whether you want to drive change or you like change or you resist change, and also how much you actually want to participate in change versus have things be stable, continuous, and non-disrupted. It's about restlessness. So some of the issues that can be affected by change is comfort in shifting business priorities. So if you've been, and I just had a customer earlier today, where they've got people that have been with a government entity a very, very long time. And now there's some changes being made. They've had some changes in leadership and they're driving new things. There's new priorities in place. And depending upon where people are at on this change continuum, you're going to get some people that are really resisting it and unhappy with it. And it was working, why are we changing it? All the way to people on the other side who are saying, it's about time, this is great, let's get on with it, let's change it. Back to that variability and focus, you get some people that are very patient with interruptions, no big deal. They can go from focusing on one activity to another relatively easily. You get others that really don't like that, would like to pace themselves and focus on what they are working on and not have the interruptions. Also, it has to do with how well you deal with boredom and routine. Those are, opposite ends of the continuum. Some people that really get bored very, very fast, and it's almost like the ADD kind of idea. They need a lot of different areas of focus to be happy and not be bored. On others, they would rather focus on a task, finish it, focus on the next task, finish it, etc. It also can impact folks' comfort with structural change if you're going to change the organization, how it's structured. The freedom score is about personal independence and personal autonomy. So the picture here is supposed to be somebody coloring within the lines. So you get some folks that are traditional, conservative, they understand how most people think. That's one end of the continuum. You get other people that very much think out of the box. And I think of artists and actors and people like that, they're on the higher end of the freedom scale in terms of their usual behavior. The freedom score can also be about, underneath the surface, their need is to be able to set their own goals and call their own shots, or they'll rebel. If somebody has a high freedom score and you get somebody imposing a lot of structure on them with a high authority tone, they're the ones who are crossing their arms and saying, okay, I don't think so, I'm out of here. The folks that have a low freedom score, again, they understand how most people think, and they can be very useful for a high freedom thinker in that they will gauge correctly how people are going to respond to a new idea. On the other hand, sometimes they constrain themselves. They draw a very small box around themselves and they operate within it. So those are the two ends of the continuum about the freedom score. And as you can imagine, where this comes into play is whether or not people care about conformity, how comfortable they are with people with differences. My sister is a doctor. I had nannies for my kids when they were little that had eyebrow piercings and tattoos and things like that. From my perspective, I didn't care as long as they took great care of my kids. My sister says she would never hire somebody who had a piercing, for example, on their face. The desire for conformity is on this continuum. Cooperation with others, engaging with the team versus being really, really independent. And then how conventional somebody is or isn't with their thinking and with their behavior. And every once in a while, I get somebody who's got a score that looks like they really have this high freedom score. They're unique in their thinking. And I'll say, okay, what gives? If sitting across the desk from me and they're in a suit and they look very conservative, I'll ask them, okay, what's going on? This doesn't look like you. And they'll tell me, yeah, I've got a tattoo on my back. I've got a Harley at home. They actually are non-conformist, no matter how they may appear on the outside. The thought score is about how much time and information you need to make decisions. And the Birkman has information about small, non-complex decisions, what to eat, what to wear, whatever you perceive to be small and non-complex, and how quickly you make those decisions. On one end of the continuum, you get people that make decisions immediately if they're small decisions in their eyes. I have another client who is an engineer who, when he goes and buys toilet paper at Costco, he's calculating the cost per ply of the toilet paper before he buys it. So those are the continuums on the thought score on the small, non-complex decisions. Then it also gives you a score around big, complex decisions. How much time and information do you need to make the big, complex decisions? Some people make big decisions, get married, get divorced, buy a house, sell a house, etc., very, very quickly without a lot of additional information. And for them, they hate the ambiguity of the decision-making process, and they just want to make the decision, get it over with, and move on, and they'll fix it after the fact. You get other people that really do want a long time to think about decisions. They want more time, more information, more time, more information, and if they don't get enough, they will worry about the decisions that they make. I had another client that was trying to paint her house green. She had 3 swatches of green paint on the side of her house for a year, trying to decide what color to paint it. That's the opposite ends of that continuum. As you can imagine, some of the things that come into play here in a work team is how cautious are people in their decision-making process? How consistent are they in the positions that they take? How comfortable are they with risk? And how much do they worry? Those folks with the high thought lines worry a great deal about the decisions that they make, and they can see all kinds of ramifications and all kinds of impacts. The folks with a short score don't even think about it. They just want to make the decision and move on. And then where you get into conflict sometimes too is if you've got a long thought process person who takes a long time to make a decision, If there are time requirements on how quickly the decision needs to be made, that can also cause some friction, where either they get overtaken by events if they won't make the decision quickly enough, or they can frustrate other people that have the shorter thought lines. The Birkman also has some information about whether or not people prefer to have public contact. The folks that like social contacts, they seek solutions through people. They're focused on people is the way they operate, and they think that they're central to organizational effectiveness. That's one end of the continuum. The other end is how detail-oriented people are. How concerned are they about procedures and detailed aspects of their work? They focus on processes as being really central to the organization's effectiveness, that you have to have good processes in place to be effective. And this is neither good or bad, but you get people on either ends of this continuum in terms of what their preferences are. And that can be very useful, in particular when you're trying to decide who's going to be doing what, that you put people in the appropriate place based on their interests and what they most want to do. Global versus linear thinking is very, very different. And for me, I think this describes a lot of disconnects that people have. So there are people that are global in their thinking. And for them, it's not a sequential, logical, rational, step-by-step process. So if you were looking at the alphabet as the problem, they would jump from A to D to Z. Answer Z. Of course it's Z. Can't you see that it's Z? The other kind of person, the linear person, is much more sequential, logical, rational, step by step by step by step by step. Okay? So when the global person goes A, D, Z, the linear person goes, wait a minute, prove to me that that's the right answer. How did you get over there? It looks like they just jumped out and down space. They're coming up with a conclusion that they've reached because they did not get there in a sequential way. On the other hand, if a linear person is going A, B, C, D, E, F, G, the global person is going, good God, do we have to go through that? The answer is Z. So as you can imagine, these people really talk very differently, think very differently, and it's useful on the Birkman. You can tell when somebody's kind of got a halfway score that they can do both. They can think both ways, talk both ways. Those are very useful translators for the rest of the group. And honestly, there is no good or bad. When I'm dealing with a group of global thinkers, so if I'm doing strategic planning with global thinkers, I can say, where are you trying to go? What is the end result you're trying to reach? And then we can align everything to achieve that end result. When I'm dealing with a linear group of leaders, I have to say, where are you? Let's take 5 steps this direction. Do you want to be there? No, let's try 5 steps in another direction. One group plans from there, the other group plans from here. And what I'd like to tell you is that they're very beneficial to each other. So sometimes the global thinkers can see where they want to go, but they can't figure out how to get there. And the linear people are very good at figuring out how do you get from here to there. There are also conceptual and concrete people. Also, again, these are kind of opposites. Conceptual people take abstract information, their experience, intuition, experiences they've had. I did this on a prior job. I read about this. Best practice is this. Why don't we try this? And they will amalgamate new ideas. They can amalgamate things into new ideas. That's what a conceptual person does. A concrete person uses facts and data and analysis to solve problems. They're very focused on concrete, immediate, visible results. When I'm doing this with a coach client, I grab the table. It's all about solid. Prove to me that it's going to work. Give me the facts and data that back up that it's going to work. Get that theoretical, conceptual idea down to application. That's what the concrete folks want most of all, is how do you actually apply it? If you're ever listening to a conceptual person talk and it's not computing what they're trying to tell you, say, give me an example of how you'd apply that. That's what you're needing if you're a concrete person. And there's no good or bad about this either. So conceptual people can come up with great ideas, great new ideas. And concrete folks can kill them off sometimes inside organizations. Because sometimes you can't prove that a great idea, a great new idea is going to work until you try it. On the other hand, you wouldn't want a conceptual person in the middle of the power grid, for example. Let's try this. So it's not good or bad. They're both valuable, but they really are different. And again, I get individuals making negative judgments about each other when they're on opposite ends of this continuum. Now, the lifestyle grid is a summary of you as a person. So it takes all of your interests, it takes those components I just described a minute ago, and places you on a 4-box grid. they found that there are 4 basic personality types, and this has been true since the time of Hippocrates. Basically, you can put all the people in the world into one of 4 categories and generally describe how they're going to behave. So this has been true for a very long time. This is what people have found. Now, the Birkman has a 4-box grid that's based on how direct a communicator you are versus an indirect communicator, or how low-key you are, versus how task-oriented or people-oriented you are. So if you're towards the top, you're more direct. If you're towards the bottom, you're more indirect. If you're more task-oriented, you're to the left. If you're more people-oriented, you're to the right. And there are 4 boxes. Let me describe the 4 boxes. So the reds are the doers, the executors. Get it done right now. They're in the action, in the moment, getting it done. That's what they're all about. The green folks are all about communication, talking, selling, motivating, communicating. The blues are the thinkers, the insightful types, the strategists, conceptual folks. And the yellows are the measurers or administrators, policy, process, structure, rules, regulations. The do's are focused on things. The greens are focused on people. The blues are focused on ideas. And the yellows are focused on systems. Again, the reds are focused on tasks, greens on relationships, blues on working with their mind, and yellows on working with rules. Okay, I think we're going to now take a poll and try to see where you guys think you are on this continuum. Deisha? Hello?
Yes, the poll is launched.
Okay. Please pick which box you think you're in. Okay, I'm going to keep explaining something while you take that poll. In organizations, what you find is the reds and the blues kind of get on each other's nerves, and the greens and the yellows get on each other's nerves. The doers are all about get it done right now. Again, in the action, in the moment. The blues want to think about it. Okay, should we do it? Should we do it that way? Is there a better way to do it? Do it. So they want to think it through. The reds are just trying to get it done. The other conflict you get is between the greens and yellows. The yellows are all about policy, process, rules, regulations, black and white, and the greens are about guidelines. So in every organization, everywhere, you get the operations and marketing folks. Operations tends to be red, marketing folks tend to be blue, and the finance and the sales folks getting into it. The finance folks tend to be yellow, and the salespeople tend to be green. Now, if you think about it, what would happen if you had all doers? If everybody was about executing, get it done, get it done, get it done. That's all you had in your organization. What do you think the risks might be of that? Well, you might run over people. It's all about getting stuff done. You might never challenge what you're doing. You could go the wrong direction really fast. And again, this tends to be a very action-oriented environment, but not a whole lot of care about people and how you handle people. If you had an organization full of greens, everybody's talk. The risk of that, of course, is, yeah, you might be able to sell stuff. Yes, you probably communicate well and you've got good relationships with people, but nobody's getting anything done. And nobody's billing for the work you've done, and nobody's coming up with new ideas. If you had a group of blues, everybody's think. Of course, the downside of that is also that, again, you may not get anything done. People are thinking about great ideas, but nobody's executing on them. And then the yellows, if it's all about policy, process, rules, regulations, black and white, the risk for those folks is you won't come up with a new product, you won't sell it to anybody, you may or may not get it manufactured or built. So the risk of that is that you resist change, and you may not do some of these other things that you need to do to survive as an organization. So the bottom line behind the Birkman, of course, is that you need all four kinds to be effective as a company. And again, we tend to think our paradigm is right and other people's paradigm is wrong, or we don't even know that these other paradigms exist, and they can be very, very different. So if there's one message out of this 4-box grid, it is we need to value those other perspectives. Because from the way I see it is that the folks that frustrate you the most, the people that really irritate you, the ones on the opposite end of the quadrant from you, are the ones who are covering your blind spot. They're thinking about things differently than you do, and it absolutely can be helpful to you if you can value the difference rather than make it wrong. Do we have the poll results?
Yes, and they are now viewing.
Okay. Does everybody see them? I don't.
Okay. Yeah, they're sharing. So we have 29% of people believe that they are red, 57% believe they are blue, and 14% believe they are green. We don't have anyone that believes they're yellow.
Okay, very interesting. All right. So I hope that you see that these are all valuable perspectives, even though they're very different. And I'm going to give you some ideas also about how to interact with people and some other perspectives that they may have here. There are folks that have perceptual filters that are all about operations and the technical side of things. There are other folks, again, that have this bias toward marketing and sales. We've got the blues that are the planning and the human resources kind of people often, and the yellows often do finance and administration. What will happen is that we tend to see our world through those filters. And so if you're looking at the problem, if you're looking at the solution, you will tend to see it from one of these 4 perspectives. Now, occasionally you get people that can see it from all 4. And those are the folks, it's almost like they've got a committee in their head in that they can see it from lots of different perspectives. If you have all operations people, you have all reds, we all see things the same way, we solve problems the same way, we can do things very, very rapidly. And these other people that think very differently than we do, it can feel frustrating because they're getting in our way and they're not allowing us to move as fast. Again, sales and marketing folks, it could be all about communication. The problem is about communication, obviously, right? The planning and human resources folks, if they see a problem, it has to do with people. We're not dealing with the people side of this effectively. And then the finance administration folks, if they've got that kind of perspective to them, it's all about systems, policy, process, rules, regulations, information systems. We don't have the appropriate systems in place, given that perceptual filter. And honestly, go ahead. Go ahead.
Where do small business owners fall? Does it depend on their subject matter expertise, i.e., the asker is a consultant in finance?
Where do small business, you know what, I've seen them in all different kinds of, with all different kinds of perspectives, to be quite honest. In order to be effective as a small business, you're actually wearing a lot of hats, right? So I would imagine you have a lot of people that are doers, and they've also got to sell or they would not stay in business. So they have some of that orientation, some of those capabilities. And I bet you a lot of business owners don't have the financial acumen that you probably do. Although some would. It depends on the business that they're in. So I think it's different depending upon the role that they're playing and their interests.
Great. Thank you, Donna.
Are there other questions?
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment. Okay. All right. The idea from Birkman, the big message is between the stimulus and the response to anything, there's a space. We have a choice. In that space lies our freedom and power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and freedom. The idea being, from my perspective, is that we all tell ourselves stories every day about other people's behavior. So something happens. We go to our paradigm on the Birkman, we go to our past experience, we go to the roles that we've played in the past, the way we were raised, our culture, and we decide what that means, right? And then we react emotionally to our own story about its meaning. And I think that's what he's saying here, is that you really do have a choice between something happening and your response to understand that the way you're looking at the situation, the way you're looking at the person, absolutely has an impact on how you're seeing it, and that you have some other choices as well. Okay, what other questions do we have?
There are no new questions just yet.
Okay, all right. Please do ask us some questions. I'll give it a second, and then I've got some additional information I hope I can share with you. All right. So if you found that you are a blue in terms of your need, what's useful for you is to spend time with individuals who give you personal reassurance, to seek out involvement with stimulating activities that involve novelty and discovery, and to build relationships with people who give suggestions rather than forceful direction. Okay? If you were a green, then it's very useful for you to spend time in environments that are active and have broad defined authority. Build broad scheduling into your life. So those greens, what they really need is they need kind of quarterly goals. It's not down to the minute. They need flexibility. And they need to spend time with inclusive and friendly groups. The reds, if you're a red, it's best for you to find groups where you can have casual, frank communication. You need to be able to communicate frankly with those around you and have the opportunity to use your strong direct authority. You also need to be in energetic environments. And if you're a yellow, then it's useful for you to have an environment that there's structure and specific directions, not a lot of ambiguity. You need to be with individuals that allow friendly, casual communication, and you want to build predictability into relationships and key processes. So the bottom line on those 4 quadrants, if you figured out what you are, try to make sure that you get your need met, because that will keep you out of stress and that will keep you from behaving in a way that's less productive for you. Did anyone else ask any questions?
No new questions.
Okay. All right then. Thank you for your time and participation. I'm going to hand it back to Deja.
Okay, thank you, Donna. If you go to the next slide, Donna will actually be presenting an on-site course on the 5 behaviors of a cohesive team on September 14, 2017. And because you all joined us today for this webinar, you will receive a discount code if you register for this course. And the discount code is Pivotal 2017. As well as we will be having upcoming webinars throughout the rest of the summer through the fall, which is also on the next slide, Donna.
Okay.
And the next one coming up is the 5 tips for process improvement strategies, where David Luckett will be speaking on that next Thursday from 1 to 2 p.m. as well. And you can find more information on our other upcoming webinars at our website at pivotalpractices.com. Thank you so much for joining us today, everyone. As always, and enjoy the rest of your day. And we look forward to seeing you in the future.